Alright, welcome back everybody. My name is Dustin, and in the last video we worked on adding the ability to shoot projectiles in our platformer game here. And in this video we're actually going to switch up a little bit and start the process of creating our Tilemap Editor. It's going to be in our editor and it's going to work for us perfectly, okay? So the first thing that I'm going to want to do is we need to create a new display for the tile sets. We went over it as a challenge in the last episode to try to make the Tileset display, and we're going to do that today. Okay, so, well, we're going to try to get that done today. So let's make a new display class and call it the Tileset Display. And in our displays, we will add a new file. And it's just going to be Tileset Display .h. And yes. And we're going to want to include our iDisplay. So let's go to our other displays and see how we're doing it. And that needs to be included in the .h file. So let's go to screen display. And we just included it that way. Okay, that's fine. So iDisplay. And we're also going to want to include string. I should do a PCH file, but this is fine for now. Then we want to do our namespace. So name space Scion Editor. Cool. And we're going to have a class Tileset Display. And that's going to inherit from our iDisplay. And we're going to have a private section. And we're going to have a public section. And in our private section for now, all we're going to need is the name of the tile set that we're using. And we're also going to need the index for the particular selected tile. Right? So std string, and that's just going to be ms tileset. Eventually this is going to have to change, but this is just, we just got to get it going, get this tile map started. Selected. So what do I mean by mSelected? That's the particular tile. So if you think of it as a grid, you're going to have a table of tiles that you can choose. And we want to know which one is currently selected so we can highlight it and change the color. And we're going to have our constructor, this Tileset Display. That can be default. And the destructor can also be default. Then we're going to have to do our overrides, and it's virtual void draw override. Cool. Then we're going to have two other functions, the setTileset and getTileset name. So inline void set tileset const std string reference s tileset. That's just ms tileset. Take it to tileset. Cool. And then one more to get it. Inline const std string reference get tile set name. That can also be const return ms tileset. Cool. All right, let's start the draw function. Okay, so it looks like it did create it for us, but it had some weirdness about it. So I'm going to want to include the Tileset display. Cool. And we can say displays. Let's make sure that both of these are in our CMake, and that should be here. And we have .h, but we also need .cpp. Cool. All right. So it doesn't like that. So let's go this. Tileset display. And we're going to want to do our namespace. So we go namespace Scion Editor. Cool. Let's go back and make this function again. Cool. All right, so it's basically going to be like other displays. We're going to need to get our ImGui, and might as well get our logger as well. And right away, we can just copy. This might not be the best one to copy from. We can just copy this right here. We'll just copy this. Go back to Tileset does. Do this here. We need to include ImGui. We need to include the logger. We need to include our resources. Where is that? Core resources asset manager. And we're going to need the main registry. Include core ECS main registry. Cool. That should get us started. We can get rid of this for now. Change this to Tileset. Tileset. Cool. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do here is get the main registry. Main registry is equal to main registry. All right. And then we're also going to want to get the asset manager, because that's where we're going to be keeping our tilesets. Tileset is nothing but like a texture anyway, so it's going to be a tileset. So we got our main registry. Whoops. Main registry dot get asset manager. Cool. All right. Now, before we keep going, we need to be able to get all the tile sets, and we want to filter them out. We don't want to just get every single texture and put those as our tile sets, because we're going to want to make a drop down or a combo box to choose which tile set we want to use right now. So we don't want to actually just get all textures and then filter it there. We want them to already be filtered in a way. So what I want to do now is go into our texture and add a flag in. We're going to want to add, is it a tile set? That's what we need to do right now. So we're going to be making some changes to the asset manager, the texture, and the texture loader today. Okay. So let's go to our texture and we'll see rendering, and that'll be include rendering essentials. And right here in our texture, we're going to want to add right here, we're going to add two private flags. So the bool MB Tileset, and we're also going to want one for editor textures, because we're going to want to be able to filter those out as well. So MB editor text. Cool. All right, and we're also going to want to add in as a default for the bool B Tileset, and that'll just be equal to false. So is it a tileset? It'll be false by default. Then we're going to want to add two functions here. So just inline bool, I could say const bool is tileset, const return MB tileset. And we want a way to set that. Inline void set is tileset. Bool B is tileset. MB tileset is equal to B is tileset. Oops. Cool. And we're going to do our editor textures. So inline. So basically we just copy both of these. Here is editor texture, MB editor texture, copy this. All right, that should be good for our texture, but we have to go into our constructor now and put it here, just say false. And then in here, bool B is tileset, or B tileset, it's up to you. And B is tileset. And for our editor texture, it's going to default to false for the editor textures, because we want it, so you have to set this by hand. not automatically when we're creating textures. Okay, cool. That should work. Now we want to go into our texture loader and make a couple of adjustments there as well. So if we go to our texture loader.h here and right down to create, and we also want to be able to create it from memory. So we have these, we need to put in all three. So pool B, we'll just say tileset is equal to false. So we'll have it default to false. Cool. Let's just copy this and go put it in all of these. So texture loader.cpp, and we want to find our create functions right here. 1, 2, and 3. Cool. And here we can just add that in. B tileset. Right here as well. And right here. Cool. That's our texture loader. Now that we have the texture loader done, we need to change how we're adding textures now. So that would be in our asset manager. So in core, include core resources asset manager. Open it up here as well. Okay. So I basically just want to do the same thing we did here. See with pixel art. So right at the end, go bool. Oops. B tileset. Whoops. Is equal to false. Might as well copy this. And you can do it for this one as well. Awesome. So now let's go into that function, the add texture function. Actually, I may as well copy this. Here, add texture needs to be adjusted. And add texture from memory also needs to be adjusted. Cool. Don't know why it's acting that way. Cool. All right. So create from memory. So it has the blended and the tile set. Right now, we're just defaulting the blended. So what we can do here is just say false for now. Oh, no, we have pixel art there. Sorry, I didn't see that. So pixel art. And we want to say B tileset. Cool. So we want to do the same with this one here. So this one has the texture art, texture path, and B tileset. Awesome. Oh, we need to add pixel art here as well. Interesting. So we missed that from previous, I believe. Oh no, it doesn't need that. My bad. Yeah. So this one just takes in the type. So it doesn't care what it is. And I think that should work. But we're going to have to change our loading as well. And by loading, I mean loading it from Lua. Because right now we're not loading it from the editor. We need to change how we're loading it from Lua. So let's go down to the bottom here. And we have our add texture function. Let's actually change this to have a sole overload. Okay, so we'll just say sole overload. Cool. Let's take this function, put it inside the overload. All right. And let's make another function. Cool. And we'll actually just paste this function as well. And the other one will also take in, is it a tile set? Will be tile set. And this, we can change this, even though it is defaulted to false, we'll just say false. And this one will say be tile set. Cool. So a nice little overload for us. That should do. So since we are loading the textures, currently we are loading some textures in our game. So it won't load it until we load the game. But we can do it this way rather than hard coding it. So we can go into our assets into the code and defs, asset defs here. And we can make a little adjustment. And for our hill tiles, we can say b tileset is equal to true. Then we can say, might as well do the background forest as well, just so we have two, so you can see what it's like to have in the combo box when we're done. And now we have to change how we load these. So we made that little load function in the utilities. So let's go to that. So utilities.lua, so utilities.lua, we call it load assets. Yep. So we need to make a slight change here. And this one, we could just say, local b tileset is equal to false. Then we can say if v.b tileset, then b tileset is equal to v.b tileset. And cool. And now we can add that in here as just b tileset. So b tileset. The reason we're doing it this way is because v.b may not exist, but this does. Okay, so it'll just default false. If it exists, then we're going to set it to that. Cool. And that should work for us. So let's just run it. And our build failed, that's fine. Right here, cannot convert all the argument types. No overload function. Oh, yeah. That makes sense. You guys probably spotted that already. Cool. Try again. Still no good. Whoops. I probably deleted that earlier, accidentally. Cool. All right, so let's see our output. Where's that issue? So the problem's in our texture loader. Right here. So it's the same thing. I didn't add in the empty string. Because for the FB texture, right here, we're loading the frame buffer texture. I still need to add that in because we did make a change. Texture path. Cool. I think that should work for us. And if not, we'll fix the next problem. There we go. All right, so it built. Let's try to run it. So it loads the textures and everything's loaded. And it's still working. Great. Awesome. So let's close that. Actually, in our asset manager, let's make sure when we're adding the texture, where's the texture? We actually are setting in that it is the tile map. So right here, after we create the texture, or right here, one or the other, let's stop it and take a look at the data. Cool. So let's take a look at our texture. Which texture is this? Nope, not the collider. Don't care about it. Don't care. Trigger, don't care. Let's get rid of this. Rain. Hill tiles. We do care about the hill tiles. Pointer. Is tile set? True. Cool, awesome. Change another one. This should be the BG forest. Yep, true. Check the last one. This should be false. And it's false. Perfect. So we can run that. And let's stop. Awesome. So now that we have a way to filter the textures, what's the best way that we can grab all the texture names? I don't want to grab the whole texture per se. I just need the name of the textures so I can loop through those for our combo box. Because the ImGui combo box is going to take in for us a vector of strings. And we're going to loop through those, and that's what is going to be the values inside of our dropdown or our combo box. Okay. So I want to create a simple utility function that's going to allow us to easily get the keys from maps. So it's going to be various types of maps, and it's going to be able to easily get the keys for us. So let's go into our utilities and create that function now. So we'll go on to Scion utilities, and in our include, we'll create a new file, add new, and it's going to be Scion utilities. Scion utilities, Scion utilities. Perfect. .h. Cool. And we're going to give it a namespace. Let's see what our other utilities are using. Timer, sure. It's just using Scion util, so let's grab that. Go to our Scion utilities, put that in, and let's add in our pragma once. Cool. Close this. All right. Speaking of that, we did make a new tileset.h. And I'm not sure if it added it in. No, it did not. Okay, so here, we want to add in our directive. So once. All right. So what do I want to do here? So I need to get all the keys from the map. Then I want to be able to put those into a vector and return a vector of keys, of the key names, whatever the type of key it is. So we're going to make some templates here. And I also want to have a way to be able to filter them based on some predicate that we send in or some function that we send in. Okay. So for that, we're going to include a few things here. We're going to want vector because I want to return a vector. And we're going to want to include algorithm. And I believe I'm going to need ranges for this as well. It might just be in the range in the algorithm library, but we're going to need ranges. So we're going to make two templates, and they're going to be called get keys. And what that's going to do is take a template, and it's going to be type name, and it's going to be the map. So whatever map that we send in, okay? And we want to return a vector, so std vector, and we want to get type name, and that's going to be of map key type. So that's what we want to return. We want to return whatever the key type is of the map. Okay, that's what our vector is going to be. And we're going to say get keys. That's going to be the name of the function. And it takes in a const map reference. Yeah. So it takes in a map. And we can just define this right here. And that's going to be auto key view is equal to std views, and we want the keys, and that takes in our map. Okay, and once we have the key view, we can actually create a vector by using the begin and end iterators of the view. Okay, so we can go std vector, and it's going to be the same vector as this type name. And we're going to say keys. That's going to be key view dot begin, key view dot end. Cool. And all we're going to want to do here is return keys. Return keys. Awesome. So what that'll do is it'll grab all the keys for us, shove it into this vector, and return that back to us. And we don't have to name what the return type is because it's taking the keys from the map. And that's going to be our return type. So the return type should be deduced on its own. Cool. So we basically want to make the exact same function. However, we want to take this. So we'll copy this and put it here. However, we are going to need one more for type name. And I'll say type name, say func. And that's what we're going to want to send in as well. So we're going to want to return the same stuff. However, we're going to want to send in the func that we want to run to filter this. Okay. So this needs to be done a little bit different. So we can say key views is equal to map. Then we want to use the pipe, and we want to say std views, not keys this time, but filter based on the func or the predicate that we're sending in. And then we want to use the pipe and get the keys, std view views keys. Cool. And then we'll have our key view. Cool. That should do it for us. The reason I want to do this is when we go and try to get we'll get the map of textures, and then we'll filter the map based on, not filter. We'll filter the map based on what we return, is it a set? And we can do this with other things as well. So this will be actually helpful later on, especially for our GUI functions. Cool, that's all we need for that. So Control K, Control D, save. All right, now we can finally go back to our Tileset display. Actually, hold on. We can, but we can't. Because we need it also to be able to get all the tiles, or all the functions, not functions, sorry. We need to also be able to get all the textures from the asset manager. Now we could do this all in the asset manager, and instead of having it like get all the textures, but we'll just do this. So we can go std map, std string, and that is, what do we call this? Shared pointers, all that. Cool. Bring this back down. Paste that there. That'll be a reference, and it will be get all textures. Return m map textures. Let's say inline. We could probably make this const as well. Let's see if this will work with const. It should work because we're not actually making any changes. All right. And let's just give this a little run just to make sure everything is still working as we hope. Now, did this get added to my CMake list? Now, I wish it did it line by line, but that's okay. Awesome. So it's running. No issues there. We can clear this, stop this. So all the textures are loaded once we hit play, because then it runs our script, our load assets script, which is fine for now. That'll do for now. Instead of us hard coding it in the C++, we can just put it into the scripts, have it load, and just press play and stop, and then we have all the assets in the asset manager. That's good for now. Eventually, we'll be able to load it by hitting like a button. You'll say open, you can open or add different textures in and stuff like that. And we'll eventually have our content so you can see all the folders that are in the project file path. All right, so let's close this down and go into our Tileset display. Since we started this here, if it keeps going, this would run here. I want to bring this down. Cool. So you want to make sure you're always ending, because if it's closed, it'll end right here. But if it's not, we need to make sure that we're still calling ImGui end. That's for all. Anytime you call begin, you want to call end. Anytime you call begin child or begin table or begin, anytime you begin something, you have to end it. So just make sure that you're doing that. Now that we have all those functions, we should be able to go auto tilesets is equal to Scion. Oh, we haven't included that. Sorry. And that will be include Scion utilities. Great. Now we can go Scion util get keys So Scion2D get keys. And what we need to do now is get our asset manager. So we need to go asset manager dot get all textures. So that's the map that we're sending in. Okay. And now we just did it like this. It would automatically see if we come over here to auto, it's going to be a string, vector of strings. That's exactly what we want because it's taking in our map and it's deducing the string from it. Okay. But now we also want to filter. So we want to go put a little lambda function, const, and then auto reference. We'll just say pair. And then we can say return pair dot second is tileset. Cool. And that'll return our tile sets for us. Just in this, that. Holy crap. What does this mean? There we go. So I like using the playing format or whatever we have in here, but it seems to do some weird stuff automatically for us while I'm still typing, and stuff goes all over the place. So I'm still getting used to that as well. All right, so now we can actually begin our combo box. So we can go if ImGui begin combo, and we'll just call this choose tile set. And that's going to take in the current tile set as a C string. And right away they say ImGui and combo. All right. So now what I want to do is loop through all of these tile sets because we know that they're going to be tile sets because we're filtering them out. And then we want to select them based off the one that we choose in the combo box. So we want to loop through them all. So we say for const auto reference s tile set in tile sets. First thing I want to do is see if the one that we have is the selected one. So I go bool MB is selected, not MB, just B is selected, sorry. And that is equal to MS tileset is equal to S tileset. Then we can say if ImGui selectable S tileset dot C string and B is selected. So what this is doing is if we're selecting that one, it's going to come in and select this one for us. So MS tileset is equal to the S tileset. Okay. Then we would say if B is selected, we want to set this as the default focus. Okay. So what that means is it will be the one that you see on the top. So we say ImGui set item default focus. Awesome. And we can come out of here. And just to ensure that we don't have an empty tile set, so let's just say if MS tile set is empty. Let's just return. So if we return from here, we got to remember to add this in. Okay. So we add in our end and return. Cool. All right. So let's just run this and see if that works. If we get our combo box. So we need to go into our application and make sure that we add in our new Tileset display. Okay. So let's go into our application.cpp right here. And let's go to the top, add in our new display. Tileset display. Then we need to add this in. Let's see where this is done. Right here. Cool. And we can just copy all this. And we'll just change these to Tileset display. Tileset display. Cool. Tileset display. All right, and then let's push that back. So it should be able to run, and we should be able to see our new Tileset display, and it should have that combo box for us. So if we run it, let's hope it builds. Awesome, it built, and there's our Tileset display. Awesome. So let's just take this and just dock it here. Let's make this a little bit bigger. So we have our drop down. It's not showing anything here because we haven't loaded any textures yet. So if we go here and I go to placing, it loaded all of our textures. And if I go here, it should have 2. Look at that. And there's our 2, nice and filtered out for us. And we can select them. And it's set up for us. Perfect. Now, all we need to do is do the actual buttons for picking our tiles. Looking good, looking good. Let's close this. And go back to our Tileset display. All right. So right here. So if we have a fresh tile set, what we're going to want to do is actually get the texture, because we're going to be rendering the texture to these buttons. We're going to be using image buttons based on the UV values of the texture. Okay. So we're going to go auto P texture. So you go to asset manager, get texture. And that's going to be the tile set that we're sending in. And we still want to check to see if the texture is valid, because the texture is a pointer. So we want to make sure that we're checking here. We could just assume that it is, but it may not. And we'll just check. So if not texture, then leave as well. You could put an error here and say that texture is invalid, but it's fine for now. So what I'm going to need now is we want to get the texture width and the texture height. Okay. And right now we have no way to, so let's take a look at one of these textures real quick. All right. So here's our hill tiles. Okay. This is, oops. I always hit that button instead. So we don't have any way to see how big these tiles are. I know each tile is 16 by 16 in this particular set, but we don't have a way to set that in the engine yet. So right now we're just going to set every tile as 16 by 16 hard coded, but we'll change it later when we start adding in the canvas, because eventually we're going to need a canvas size, and we're going to need a way to set the tile size for our tile sets. Okay, and we'll be doing that later on, but today we're just trying to get this on the screen and be able to get those buttons. Okay, so the first thing, let's get the width and height. So let's go int texture width is equal to p texture get width. And we also want the height. And we can go, now we need to get the number of columns and rows. Again, it's just going to be hard coded for now, but eventually we're going to do it a different way. So we'll go int calls is equal to texture width divided by 16. Now we know that our texture width is bigger than 16 and texture height. I forgot to change it up here as well. And this should be rows. Cool. So now I need to get the UV width and UV height. We also need to get the UX, UY, VX, and VY of the texture, okay? And those will all be float values, and we want to go float UV width is equal to 16 divided by static cast float texture width. And we'll also want to do the same thing for height. That'll be our UV height. And then we want to set our UX and our UY both to 0. So float UX 0.f. See, it shouldn't do that. UY. So weird. 0.f. Then I want to say VX. And that's going to be equal to our UV width. So it's basically across. So like a tile width across. So UV width. And then VY. There we go. Is equal to UVY. or not UVY, UV height, sorry. So that's the width across and the height across. So 0 to whatever value between 0 and 1 the width is of each tile. Okay? So that's what that is. All right. So now that we have this, we have these values, we need to make a ImGui table. So the first thing I'm going to want are some table flags. So ImGui table flags. And we'll just call those table flags. 0. Then we want to say table flags or equals ImGui table flags sizing fixed fit. And one more, and we say ImGui table flags, and we want to be able to scroll X. Cool. All right, so now I also want to have 2 int values for holding our current values are, our current placement are. The K is going to be for the current ID, and then we also actually want to have ID to check. Cool. So now I can go if ImGui begin table, and that's tileset. We say calls and table flags. And now we want to loop through all the rows for int I equals to 0. I is less than rows. Then I plus plus. Then we want to go ImGui table next row. And then we want to do another for loop and go through all the columns. And this will be J calls and J plus plus. Calls J plus plus. Cool. And then I want to set the column index to J. So ImGui table set column index to J. Awesome. Then we can say if, scroll this down a bit, M selected is equal to ID. This is where we want to set the table color or the cell color that this is our selected one is this cell. So now we want to change the color of that cell. Okay, so ImGui table set BG color. ImGui table BG target cell BG. And I want to say ImGui get color U32, and that takes in an ImVec4, and it's going to be 0.f, 0.9, f, 0.f, and 0.3 f. Cool. Now we want to create a unique ID for each of the buttons. Okay, so we can just say that create unique ID for the buttons, and we can just say ImGui push ID K++. So now that we got here, we can actually start making our buttons. So I can go if ImGui image button. The reason why we need this ID because we need to know what button we're pushing and we need then which one that we're pressing on at that moment. Okay, and we need to get the texture ID. So we can go IM texture ID, and it's P texture get ID. Cool. Then I can say IM vec2. Now, right now, again, this is going to be the size. So our image size, how big do I want to make this? Right now, we only know that they're 16 by 16s. So this is also going to have to be variable as well. Okay. So we'll just say 16.f times, right now, I want to make it 1.5 the size because 16 pixels is quite small without scaling it up. And we'll do this for both. So it'll be a nice square, 16 by 16, but 1.5. Now we're doing our UV0. For UV0, we want to send an ImVec2, and that's going to be our UX and UI. Okay, then we have to do another one. Is for UV1. This was the UV1, and this is UV0. The other way around, sorry. Then I want to say ImGui. Not ImGui, so just ImVec2. This one's going to be our VX and VY. VX and VY. Okay? Cool. So if our image button is pressed, just now, we want to set the selected ID to the ID, and all we want to do is log the start X and start Y values. And the start X and start Y will be the J and I respectively. We're also going to have different tools eventually that will set the UVs for the texture, and you'll be able to place the texture at that point, but we're not there yet. We got a lot of work to do before we get to that. So we go M selected is equal to ID, whatever the ID is right now. And I want to say Scion log, and I want to say start X, start Y, and that's just going to be J and I. Because J is your columns, so show your X, and your Y is your rows or your I. Okay, awesome. And once we get out of there, we want to pop the ID. ImGui pop the ID. Because again, we pushed here, so we want to pop. Anytime you push, kind of like style that we did previously, anytime you push the style, you want to pop the style off. So we're pushing an ID on, we want to pop the ID off, okay? And now we want to advance the UVs to the next column. So we can say that, advance the UVs of the texture to the next column. Okay, then we can say UX plus equals the width, so UV width. So we're moving over the start value of our U or UX to where the width is, so the width of the texture, not the texture itself, of the tile, sorry. And we want to do the same thing for UV, or for VX, move it all over. And we want ID plus plus, or plus ID. Cool. All right. So that's for all of our columns for the width. So we've done one full width, right? And now when we get here, we're going down to the next row. So we want to put our UX value back to 0, okay? So I want to say UX is equal to 0.f. We can even say that. Put the UVs back to the start column of the next row. Okay? And then we want to say Vx is equal to UVW. Then we want to say Uy is equal to, or sorry, is plus equal UV height. And Vy also plus equal UV height. Awesome. And right here, since we made it all the way here, we want to end our table. We should have did that before, but if we made it here, we want to say ImGui end table. Awesome. And that is it. That's all we need to do. So let's move it all back so we can see everything that's going on here. So what we're doing right from the top is we're starting our new window here with ImGui begin called Tileset. getting our tile sets from the asset manager, and we're filtering the keys based on the tiles inside a tile set. Then we're looping through. This is our beginner combo box or drop down box, and we're setting it based on whatever one that we select. So we loop through the tile sets that we have, and we're setting the tile set based on this. Okay. And then the default focus one is if they're the exact same. So if this tile set is equal to this tile set, that's going to be our default focus item at the top. Okay. Then if we don't have any tile sets selected, we're just going to leave. Then here, now that we get here, we have our tile set. It's not empty. We get the texture from the asset manager itself. Okay. The reason why we did the keys is because I need something to fill in this combo box, and we don't need the whole texture for that. I just need the strings of the keys. And then now here, I want to get the texture width, texture height, just so I can get the number of calls and number of rows. And then that way I can also get the UV width and UV height. We did something similar to this in the sprite component when we're generating the UVs. And then here we just set these values so we can set them in our button here. Then we're looping through our table through the rows and columns, splitting up each piece of the image as a new button, okay? And then moving and advancing our UVs accordingly, okay? So we should run this and it should work. All right, let's run it. Cool, so it's running and it didn't dock because we're not using we didn't add it to our dock builder yet. So right now it's just a floating screen. We got nothing to pick, so let's just make this big here. And we'll start the scene, so we just get some tiles and hill tiles. Yay! So there's our hill tiles. We got our buttons, and when we click on it, it shows green. It's selected. That's exactly what we want to do. All right. So let's actually take our logs and make sure it's logging correctly. So here it should be 0, 0, 1, 0, 2, and it is. So clear this. Down here, 9, 9, 0, 0, or yeah, 0, 0, 9, 0. Perfect. And if we change it to our BG forest, bam, the big one here. And it's got all these tiles. Awesome. So it's working exactly the way that we want it to be. So later on, when we say we have our tile set, we'll be able to click on this and it'll set the UV values or the start X and start Y of our component. So each tile is going to have a sprite component, just like another entity. And when you click on it, you'll have your start X and start Y. So it'll know how to draw it, and it'll float with the mouse, and every time you click it, it'll place the tile with those particular values set for you. We'll get to that very shortly. We still have a lot of work to do to get to that. However, I do have a challenge. So we're going to need another display, and this display is going to be the Tilemap display. Okay, so the Tilemap display, we're going to want to have a grid. Okay, so I need you guys as a challenge, make the Tilemap display and try to make a new grid system. So make a new system that creates a grid. And all it is a bunch of rects or rectangles drawn in a grid formation. Okay. So you just want to have a certain amount of tiles based on, right now we don't have a canvas width, but you're going to have canvas width and height and tile width and tile height eventually. But right now, just base it on 16 by 16 tiles and see if you can make a grid and have them differ in color. So don't have them all the same colors. They'll be filled rects and they'll all have a different color. So each other one will be a different color. Okay. So that's your challenge. Give it a shot. I'll put a little bit of more information in the description to help you out with the challenge. And if you have any questions, feel free to leave it in the comments below and I'll make sure to get back to you. All right. Take it easy.